If I could summarize my two objections to Christianity from the beginning of my journey, it's that Christians were too stupid to figure things out on their own, and so they made up a God. Mm-hmm. And Christians were too weak to deal with their own problems, and so they had to have a God to cry out to. And
I think what's funny is I think there's the first half of both of those statements are true.
Well, that's exactly what I came to. I mean, that was, and the Lord never hit me over the head with that. He allowed me to just very slowly discover the limits of my own mind and the limits of my own strength. And that was really the kind of the next breakthrough. I was studying in Germany about a year after this experience with the Gospel of John, and I had started gone to Mass every weekend, and I would have just come into RCIA, but I studied the spring semester in Germany, so I knew I'd be away during Easter, and I thought, well, I'll come back to Penn
State. So you're
State.
going to Holy Mass, but not receiving Eucharist.
That's right.
Getting to know people there, presumably, or standing in the back.
No, I sort of waded in. The girl I was dating was also a Catholic, so
that helps.
She, so I knew where Mass was, and we went together many times. But in Germany, I really ran into the limits of my own strength and was just stretched enough taking graduate classes in German and computer science and mathematics, and felt really far away from home and just disconnected, and really cried out to God for my weakness for the first time. And it was in the wake of that I finally had an answer to the question that I had asked the other college students. You talk to God, and then does he talk back? And recognizing his presence, and it wasn't sort of extraordinary phenomenon in any way. I didn't hear audible voices or see anything, but recognize that still small voice that was amazingly familiar. And yet for the first time I recognized that it was the voice of God who was speaking to me in his own obscure ways that keep us free. But anyway, it was in the midst of that experience that I started thinking about giving my life to sharing that gift of prayer for the first time.
What year were you when you entered RCIA?
So I came back after that experience in Germany. I was a senior in college.
What year was that?
Well, it would have been the year 96, 97 school year.
Wow.
So I was baptized in 97.
Wow. And what was the RCIA experience like for you?
Not great.
Yeah.
I had such a rich experience. I was already going out fishing for college students at this point. Nobody ever took me up on it, but I had the courage, the nervous courage to go and ask people to study the Bible with me.
Beautiful.
On Penn State campus, and my experience of faith, of praying spontaneously with people, even discerning, listening to God, having a sense of his presence, all of these things were so developed, and the RCIA was a little bit flat at that time. So
were you going through it with anyone else?
Yeah, there were 8 of us baptized.
And were there intellectual seekers like yourself, or not really?
Not the same. Yeah,
it's got to be hard.
Yeah, so a few of the catechists, the student catechists there, were some beautiful people, and actually introduced me to the charismatic renewal. That became a thread of my story in that time. Some of the students were really great witnesses of faith and kind of full-hearted, full-bodied people. And to be honest, I needed a little bit more of that than the intellectual stuff to balance some things out.
Yeah, that was where I was at as well.
Yeah.
One thing I loved, and I know people can criticize the charismatic renewal, and maybe justly in certain instances, but one thing I loved about my charismatic friends is that they acted as if God existed and was working now.
Right.
It wasn't just a sort of philosophical system I had to adhere to. It was a relationship that was actually active now. And
And that really corresponded with what I had experienced in Germany and the sense that I was living under. I got so excited about that when I made the connection when I was in Germany that I started asking God about everything. Like, should I take a left to go to class today, or should I take a right? Should I have ham for dinner or turkey? Just like asking him about everything. And then I kind of ham. Okay, all right.
Good,
we'll do
God would
ham.
never suggest turkey.
But yeah, very much found a resonance with that in the charismatics.
Were your friends put off by the fact that you not only become a Christian but a Catholic?
Well, that was chapter. I tend to be a little bit conflict averse, and so I didn't bring that up right away. I just kind of kept doing the Bible study, and they knew I was going to Mass, and they had a Sunday. I also went to their Sunday worship service quite a bit, and the group at Penn State in particular was more Catholic friendly than some of the other groups. The head of that group had grown up Catholic, had never really rejected the church, just kind of didn't get it, wandered away, met the Bible study group, and then had really found a place there. So I remember him talking about lauding John Paul II as being a great missionary, for example. So there was something that was kind of Catholic friendly there. But when I eventually told David that I was going to be baptized in a couple months, he started to question that decision. And it wasn't until Holy Thursday that we had met for a Bible study, and he said, I've been really trying to figure out how to express this to you, and I think this is it. If you're baptized Catholic, I think you really need to commit yourself to ministry in the Catholic Church, because I basically was doing ministry with the University Bible Fellowship and kind of moving on that track, and then sort of sacramentally becoming Catholic. And he was seeing this, like do one or the other. And he said, you're going to be a leader wherever you go, but I think you need to make that decision before you're baptized, make a commitment up front one way or the other. And he said, and really, I bless your decision. I mean, so I really wrestled with that. I just skipped all my classes for the day, spent the day in prayer. I went to talk to the priest on campus and had a nice chat. Ironically, being here in Steubenville now, he had mentioned Scott Hahn, and he could see, because what I really hadn't experienced was anything evangelical in the Catholic Church. And he could see that in me, a desire to share the faith. I mean, that was really this driving thing that happened in me. And he said, well, a lot of people have brought in the gifts of the Protestant church into the Catholic Church. We really grow from that.
That's what I was just talking about a moment ago.
Exactly. Yeah. So he encouraged me, and he said, ultimately you have to make the decision. And so prayed with me a little bit, and then I went on my way. It should have been a sign to me that I was drawn to go. I walked to the church downtown. I wanted to pray in the church. And as I was kneeling there, and interestingly, I had sort of gotten the Eucharist, but it wasn't anything I had struggled with. And so there was a way, I suppose, that I hadn't gotten it. I had just gone to Mass several times. We moved from John 1 eventually to John 6. I read John 6. I thought, that's what's going on at Mass. And I just kind of moved on and didn't really reflect on what that meant. Although I was very aware of not receiving communion. So all of those things were in me, and I was looking at the tabernacle, I was praying, and I just said, Lord, I just want to do whatever you want me to do. And then I saw the light on the flame and the vigil candle, the tabernacle candle, just flared up for a moment. And I don't think anything extreme, but it's just, the timing of these things, right? So that I was looking there, that I noticed that, it flashed, and then these words came to me, I want you to fan the flame of my church. And so that really resonated and moved me. And then as I moved away from, I went to walk back to campus, then the thought of not receiving the sacraments started to go through. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. Maybe I could put this off a little bit longer. I had been going to Mass for basically 2 years and hadn't received communion. Maybe I could do another 6 months or something. But then I thought, never in my life being baptized, well, I would have been baptized in this other UBF probably, but never in my life receiving Holy Communion, never receiving the sacrament of confession, never being confirmed. Well, this is clearly not an option. So then the decision went forward, and on Holy Thursday, already with a sense of, if I'm going to commit myself to this, it's a real commitment to serve and to give myself to the church. So I had already been thinking about priesthood for 9 months before this, and that desire to move forward with the vocation was really strong at that point.
Did you discern any other religious orders?
Well, I didn't even know what a monk was. Although the campus ministers were monks, I didn't really quite make the connection. I don't know, maybe they didn't preach about it. They also were clerics as well as they, the one wore his habit also, but they had the director of campus ministry brought students to St. Vincent every semester, and that happened to be the weekend after Easter. So he invited me to come along on my first vocation visit a week after I was baptized. And on the one hand, I thought, well, I'm not called to be a monk. I'm called to evangelize. This is really this desire to share the faith is this strong thing in me. But then when I got to St. Vincent, I experienced the community. I saw the outreach and just really felt a strong connection there. I then went to World Youth Day a couple months later.
Whereabouts?
In Paris.
Okay, yes.
And got to see the Universal Church. And I also read my first biography of a saint, which was Chesterton's biography of St. Francis.
Oh, excellent.
I fell in love with St. Francis.
Yes.
I asked about authentic Franciscans, and someone directed me to the CFRs.
Yes.
So I visited the CFRs. I loved the CFRs. I wanted to be a CFR. And God wanted me to go to St. Vincent and be a Benedictine. And it was really a very strong experience in prayer that I just couldn't deny, that the Lord was directing me to be a Benedictine. So I joined the Benedictines, and it seems to be working out.
Beautiful.
Thank you for watching this clip. You can click here to watch the full episode. And I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors and to our amazing patrons for making all of this possible. Please do us a favor before you go. Click that subscribe button and then the bell. And that way YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new episode.